This week we are going to be propagating plants by grafting and budding, and to do that first we need to know a little bit of terminology. Whatever we're going to use as the roots or the bottom of the plant is going to be referred to as the rootstock, and whatever we're putting on top is going to be referred to as the scion. This could be a whole stick or just a bud. Either way, whatever the desired cultivar is that's being added is going to be called the scion. Here we have a longitudinal and a cross-section of a stem. The brown layer on the outside edge is the epidermis. The green layer that's on the inside of that is the vascular cambium that contains phloem and parenchyma cells and fibers, and those are going to be really what we want to look for to match up on both our scion and our rootstock. And then the center is going to be old dead xylem. And the same thing is true for this circular area. The whole goal really is to match this green layer on both the scion and the rootstock so that those parenchyma cells can heal together and form one solid graft union on a plant. The first type of graft that we're going to do is called a splice graft. And the splice graft is going to be done on tomatoes, where we're putting the scion of a tomato onto the rootstock of a tomato. And to do this, we're just going to make one straight angular cut, and we're going to match up the shape of that cut from the scion and the rootstock, and then we'll put a little clamp on that, and hopefully it will heal together. This is done on herbaceous plants. Some people do this on larger woody plants too, as long as you're matching up that cambium layer on the woody plants. It should take, but this type of graft often needs a lot of support if you're going to put it on a tree. One of the most common and easiest types of grafts to do is called a cleft graft, where we're essentially making a female or straight cut through our rootstock, and then we're turning our scion into basically like a screwdriver sort of thing, and that's going to be our male piece. When we do that, we're going to expose this kind of a shape of cambium layer on our scion, and we're going to hope that that heals into our rootstock. If you do this inverted, like the other way, so that the scion has the female piece and the rootstock is the screwdriver, that's called a saddle graft. This is a really great graft to try to do if you're just learning how to graft, and it's usually fairly successful. It works really well on apples and on plums. The next kind of graft that we demonstrate is called a whip and tongue, and it's similar to a cleft, but instead we have just more areas where we're going to have surface area to volume ratio contact between our scion and our rootstock. And the more opportunities that you have for places of healing, the more successful your graft is likely to be. These cuts heal very strongly, they're very beautiful, and it is a little bit more advanced, so if you're just starting out, I would definitely recommend just starting with cleft, but you can move on to whip and tongue as soon as you feel a little bit more confident and you want to try some things. This type of cut, basically if I have enough material to do a whip and tongue, I do a whip and tongue just because you do have those more opportunities of healing between your scion and your rootstock. And it's very strong, so I really like this type of graft. Lastly, we're going to do something that's called bud grafting, and we're going to do two different types of bud grafting. We're going to do both a chip and a T-bud. In bud grafting, you're not using an entire stick as your scion material, you're just using one particular node. So you would cut that node off of your bud stick or your scion, and then you would insert that into your rootstock. And you could do that as a chip by just cutting out an exact same piece that you slide it into on your rootstock, or you can do it as a T, where you create like this little pocket by cutting a T in there and folding open the flap and then inserting that bud on the inside. Both of these work fairly well for roses and peaches, citrus. This works pretty well on. There's a lot of different plants that you would use this type of graft on, and it works a lot better if your material is limited. So if you don't have that many buds, but you want to make more trees because you have enough rootstock, instead of using a scion that has 3 to 5 buds that you're grafting onto something, you're only using one bud in these cases.